welcome again. Today's topic is FGM, which stands for Female Genital Mutilation. And the purpose of today's interview is to understand why this is practiced in some parts of the world, including in the United States of America as well. Really, what is FGM? And what are the purposes or the reasons behind someone wanting to practice FGM? So to better understand what FGM is, I am going to sit down today with Christine, who is from the African continent, and she'll tell you a little bit more specifically about where she's from, and then we'll get into that discussion. So Christine, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Christine Ochieng, and I'm from Kenya in Africa, and I'm a student at Taron County College. And the reason why I chose FGM as a topic is because I'm passionate about the girl child, and I felt so bad that this was happening to the girl child, and it's an inhumane act that shouldn't be done, and so I thought I should do some more research on it.
Okay, all right. So to start off today is, what is FGM?
So FGM is female circumcision in layman terms, and how it is done, it's they either cut a part or a hole of the clitoris of the girl child, or they can remove the labia, or they can also stitch part of the labia to create just a small opening for the girl to go to the restroom.
Okay, all right. And tell me a little bit about the practice in Africa first, in different parts of Africa. Let's talk about that a little bit. What do you know?
In Africa, it's done. Even in Kenya, it's done, but right now it's illegal, but some people, I'm pretty sure they still practice it, but it's mostly popular in countries like Somali because those are the ones who had this culture from a long time ago.
Okay.
And even though it is illegal, some people feel the pressure to still continue doing it.
Okay. So it's a traditional custom, a traditional practice that is being continued.
Yes.
What is the overall goal of the practice, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, I don't think it should be done, but the reason they gave for doing it is because they want to keep the girl pure until she's ready for marriage, so to prevent her from being involved in premarital sex.
Okay. So basically FGM is done so that the female cannot have sex.
Yes.
All right. So let me just read off some facts here from the WHO, World Health Organization, and then we could discuss them.
Okay.
FGM includes procedures that intentionally alter or cause injury to female genital organs. The procedure has no health benefits for girls or women. It can cause infections as well as complications in childbirth, increased risk of newborn deaths. So even with the possibility of having problems with childbirth and increased death, what does your research say? Are there some women who are not able to have kids after having this done to them?
Yeah, according to the research I did, especially by Leila Hussein, she's one of the female FGM activists in UK, and she was talking about how she went through it and how so many other girls couldn't be able to give birth to children because of that.
Okay. And it says that over 200 million girls and women alive today have been cut in 30 African countries, the Middle East, and Asia. And then there are incidents and cases of it in the United States as well. And it's predominantly done on infants or girls, or girls from about up to 15 years of age. So typically, from your research, what age these girls are cut? Is it 7, 8, 9?
It usually starts from around the age of 3 years to sometimes around 7 years, but they prefer the adolescent girls because that's when they're starting to know a lot of stuff. And mostly in America, it was done around when the girls were around 3 years because that's when they were known to start masturbating, and so the parents wanted to prevent them from doing that.
Okay, so they were preventing them from masturbating, and they're also preventing them from having sex.
Yes.
Okay, so it says there are 4 parts to this. The first one is the clitoris is completely removed or basically stitched up, and that's to obviously prevent them from being able to have sex. The other one is So there's a narrowing of the vaginal opening, so it's basically sealed up. So that's why I guess they're not going to be able to have.
Yeah,
Yep.
because the only space left there for them is the one that they're going to use to go to the restroom, and that's it.
Okay. All right, so the complications now. It says that there could be severe pain, excessive bleeding, genital tissue swelling, fever, infections, and the list goes on, shock, death. What does your research say in terms of the complications that they can face because of this?
My research basically says almost the same thing as what you have on there, but then I could add that most of the women become infertile because after what they have gone through, they can no longer be able to give birth to children. And then another thing is they can bleed to death, that just as you said. And the most important thing that happens to them is the stigmatization. So they get stigmatized, and since they are not aware of many other girls who are going through the same thing, they're not willing to talk about it, and so they're just going through it on their own. And another major thing is during their periods, they get a lot of pain due to the clogging of blood because it cannot all come out due to the small opening they have.
Yeah, and then yes, it says they have menstrual problems, difficulty in their menstrual cycle. They have severe pain during intercourse. That's, I guess, if they try to have sex. And the purpose of it is that there's obviously going to be decreased satisfaction, so it discourages them. So this is almost looked at as a way not just to, not have sex, but not have kids, or not just premarital sex, but childbirth. Obviously, they're not going to be able to have kids.
Yeah, but the main reason they do it is basically to prevent them from not having premarital sex. But then they still think that the girls are going to be able to have babies later on. But even if research shows that they still are not able to get kids, in some cases they still do it. And so in Middle East, according to an article by Leslie, he's called Leslie Smith, he mentions that in Egypt it was done because they thought that if the girl had a large clitoris, it was thought to be a deformity, and so that's why they did it.
Okay. Wow. So, in kind of backing up when you're saying, so there's a need for surgery, and basically what they do is to cut open the vaginal area that they stitched up to allow for sexual intercourse and for childbirth. Wow, this is still crazy. I can't believe this is. And so it's a cultural and social thing, and it says that it's often considered as necessary for raising a girl and a way to prepare them for adulthood and for marriage. And so the purpose is to make sure that there's fidelity.
Yes. Yeah. And so later on, once they're ready for marriage, they have another surgery done on them to allow them to have sexual intercourse. And either way, when they're about to give birth, then it becomes a problem.
Yeah, it becomes a problem. So any research that you've looked at that talks about, like, you hinted to it a little earlier, the mental, stigmatization that they go through, and just kind of dealing with that from a psychological perspective. What does your research say about that?
Well, my research says that most of them are told not to talk about it, especially in countries that are developed. Like over here in America, some of them are taken out of school, or maybe during vacations they're taken to other countries, especially Middle East, and they're told that they're going on vacation and it's during the cutting season. And so once they come back, they realize that something different.
So you said cutting season. Is there actually a cutting season?
According to them, there's a cutting season. So
wow.
That's when the parents take their babies, their girl children to other places. Right?
So obviously in America, it's not going to be something that's right. So they say, okay, we're going to take you on a trip to wherever. You're going back home for the holidays, and you think you're going home for Christmas and that's probably because,
Yeah, but in some states, it's illegal in 27 states right now, but in some of the other states, there's some doctors who still practice it, but then it's still something that is done underground.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that too, because the research also says that there are some doctors who are still practicing it, or just some people on the medical side still doing it, and they're thinking that, well, if it's done medically, so to speak, especially in some of those countries, well, it's safer, but that doesn't necessarily mean
Yeah,
than
it
it is.
doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything because after all, her genitals are hard and
Yeah.
she's already gone through all the humiliation. So.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you think can be done? What is the research saying that can be done to deal with FGM or to make it? Because to be quite honest with you, I didn't hear about this until your presentation, which is why I decided to do this. And I don't think a lot of people, quite frankly, have heard about FGM. So, what do you think needs to be done as far as educating the population or the world or whatever as to what's going on about FGM? Or what have you read in your research?
Okay, whatever I read in my research so far, there is United Nations Children's Fund and World Health Organization. They banned that practice in 1997. And so if anyone is caught doing this practice, they can be jailed for up to 14 years. And then another thing that happens in my country is the girls, they're always rescued when they're about that age, when they know that they're at risk for having FGM practice on them. And then there's another issue of traditional specialists, they believe.
Yeah. So let's talk, who's the traditional specialist?
So the traditional specialist is one of the older ladies who's been through it. And so
And been doing it for years?
Yes.
Okay.
And so these other ladies, they think that she's the right person to
And
go
she
to.
is not necessarily a medical educated nurse or anything like that. She's
No.
just someone who's been living in the village that's done this thing for a while, so she's considered certified in her own way.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the only thing that she uses is razors and scissors, and then she can use maybe some rope or something, and she doesn't use no anesthesia and nothing. So the girl just goes through the entire pain like that.
Ooh. I don't think I know what to say after that.
I know,
Ooh.
it's so sad.
Razors, scissors, and rope.
Yeah, and maybe just some stitches to make the stitches work, but they don't really work. And it's also another risk because once they do that, it's kind of like they have a celebration for it. So all the girls who are going to be to have FGM practice on them, they all brought together, and then now that it's a celebration, it will be used, the same razor is going to be used from one person to the other,
Ooh.
which also brings up the risk for HIV
For
and
HIV.
other infections.
Oh my goodness. And so that within itself has probably contributed to HIV. That I don't know if there's studies that probably not, because people haven't been honest about FGM. So it would be interesting if someone did a study to see if there are connections between, people who've been using the same scissors or razor blades or whatever, and then using it in someone else to see how many people probably passed on.
Yeah, I think it will be good for them to do that,
Yeah.
but maybe they think because the girls are still young, they haven't had any sexual intercourse, they're still okay.
So
But they
Yeah.
forget that there's some of those children who were born with HIV already. So,
exactly, yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, what else do you think has to be done, what can be said to these parents who are willingly offering up their girls because of tradition? Because when I hear it, I'm thinking, that is crazy.
I know.
Scissors, razor, doesn't sound like anything good could happen there. So what do you think has to be done? Because you come from that part of the world, it's just...
Yeah, like I say, well, they rescue the children so they can go through FGM. But another thing they do is for the traditional specialists, they're always arrested. Like if you're found doing it, they arrest you. And another thing is educating the community about FGM. But there are also some setbacks because some of the ladies believe that once FGM is done on the girl, since she won't have gone through premarital sex, so she hasn't had any unwanted babies. And so she ends up getting more dowry for the baby, but they're trying to curb that.
Yeah. And so, yes, the research just says that over 200 million girls alive today are at risk in 30 countries of being cut, still being practiced secretly in Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and I guess a very limited way here in the US as well. So it seems like CNN did a piece on it, and I was watching it probably a week or so ago. It seems like it's becoming more
prevalent.
and people are learning more about it.
Yeah.
What else do you have that you would like to tell us about FGM?
Well, I also have some research that says that about 65,000 girls go through FGM in Britain, And so Leila Hussein is one of the ladies who lives in Britain right now, and she also tries to talk to the ladies about it and some of the parents. But
So 65,000 a year, roughly?
yes, per year.
Yeah, because England does have that strong presence of African population as well.
Yes.
And so I guess, does the research say if they're actually cutting the girls in Britain, or are they also taking them back home to their African countries?
Some are done in UK and some are done back home, but then they're trying to cut that. So recently I read on a research that said that once they realize that a large group of girls are being transported, they make sure that they check them. And so when they're coming back, they make sure that nothing happened to them. And so if the parents who are found to have taken their children to a different country to have FGM practice on them, they're arrested.
They're arrested.
Yeah, once the girls come back and they realize that happened, they arrest the parents.
So have you looked into how they're checking when they get back? I mean, are they just questioning them at the airport? So you said you were going to XYZ, but your passport shows that you also stamped it. Are those some of the ways they're checking, or do you know?
They also check the female genitals to make sure that they're okay, and they also kind of can look at the girls and say maybe there's some discomfort or something like that.
Kind of tell.
Yes.
Wow, this is crazy. Yes. So anything else about FGM?
So about FGM, the other thing I want to say is World Health Organization, it came up with 6 February as the International Day of Zero Tolerance for FGM.
So 6th of February.
Yes.
Okay. Well, this has been really interesting, really eye-opening. The fact that you could use razor blades and scissors and rope on someone and think that it is healthy and to think that it is right is crazy and inhumane. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk about this, and if necessary, I guess we might have to get together and talk about this again, because this is crazy. And thank you very much for showing up, and it was a pleasure. Thank you.